I'd like to welcome you back to our study in the book of 2 Corinthians. Today we're in 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, and we're looking at verse number 14. Now, the context of this, again, in case you haven't been following, is the Apostle Paul is talking about what the fear of the Lord produces. And if you didn't hear yesterday's podcast or last Friday's podcast, go back and catch it all. I don't have the time, nor do I want to take the time to go back to all of that when it's already recorded and it's there available for you to listen to and to receive from. But the Apostle Paul now says in verse 14, "For the love of Christ controls us." Do you know what? When we operate in a reverence and a respect for God, you know what? One of the things that's produced in our lives is it produces within us the love of Christ. You know, when I've been blessed to go to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and there are beautiful paintings that Van Gogh painted. Of course, I'm Dutch, so I'm a little bit prejudiced. Now, I'm maybe a whole lot prejudiced towards him, but I mean, you can look at those paintings, and you know what? Because of the reverence you have for that artist, you don't grab that painting and destroy it, treat it in a bad way, but you love it. Well, you know what? When you have a respect, a fear of the Lord, one of the things it's going to produce in your life is a love of Christ. The love of Christ. The love that comes from Christ. Now notice what the Apostle Paul says. The Apostle Paul says the love of Christ controls us. It controls us. Now the word controls there, it actually means to hold us together. Have you ever been in a situation where you don't know what's going to happen? Well, you know what? If you fear the Lord, the love of Christ is going to come into you, and it's going to take control. It's going to come in, and it's going to hold you together. Now, let's bring this into the historical context of where Paul is writing to. Paul is writing to the Corinthians. The Corinthians are under the same philosophy of the Roman Empire, which by the way, was a philosophy that changed not too many years before this, that Christians were not allowed to speak publicly, that Christians can be persecuted, that Christians can be put to death. How many of you realize that it's the love of Christ, the love that Christ places on the inside of you, that then needs to come in and take control? I've been blessed to be in the presence of people that were persecuted for their faith. I went into the Soviet Union in 1991, and I ran into Christians who were finding liberty at that time, but they had gone to prison for their faith. I've been to other countries, which I won't mention here, but where people died because of their faith. And you know what controlled them? You know what kept them going? It was the love of Christ on the inside of them that kept them moving forward, that took control of their lives. And so the Apostle Paul says, if you've got the fear of the Lord, if you're reverencing Jesus, if you've got the fear of the Lord, one of the things it's going to produce in you is the love of Christ. And the love of Christ is going to take a hold of you, and it's going to not only secure you, but it's going to actually begin to move you forward. Now notice what Paul says next. Having concluded this, in other words, Paul's saying, you know what? This is what I understand. This is what I've concluded. This is what I've judged. Actually, the word concluded, I have concluded, means I've judged this. I've made this determination in my life that one died for all. Therefore, all died. You see, Paul brings us back to the greatest example of love that mankind has ever seen, and that is Christ dying for all. You see, Jesus didn't die just for the believer. He died for every person that's ever lived. And so Paul writes and he says, one. Who's the one? One died for all. The one is Jesus. And he died for all mankind. That doesn't mean all mankind have accepted what he's done on the cross for them. But Jesus did it for all mankind. And then he says this, therefore all died. What do you mean all died? Every believer doesn't have to live for themselves. We begin to live for Jesus. We begin to live for Jesus. Our lives take on a whole new perspective because of the love of Christ. We are held together. And because of the love of Christ, we realize, we come to this comprehension, come to this judgment, this determination that Jesus died for me. Therefore, I will die for him. Maybe not physically, but I'll die to my desires. I'll die to what I want for him. Verse number 16 starts out with this word, therefore. Therefore, from now on, we recognize no one according to the flesh. What is he talking about? We don't understand. The word recognize, again, is the word eido. We've talked about this word many times. I've come to this understanding. Therefore, I've come to this understanding that no one is recognized, no one is understood, perceived according to the flesh. And then he goes on and he says, even though we have known Christ according to the flesh, we know Christ. We know that Jesus was in the flesh, but we don't understand a person by the flesh. We don't look at their flesh and understand them. You know, people look at people with tattoos and they say, how can they be a Christian? They're not Christians. Well, maybe they got those tattoos after or before they became a Christian. Maybe they got those tattoos after, but you know what? We cannot look at a person's flesh and determine who they are and determine their value. Oh, that man's got long hair. Now long hair is more suitable today than it was. Oh, I don't like that man's haircut. You know what? We can't do that. Paul says we recognize, we determine, we understand no one according to the flesh, even though we know Christ according to the flesh. And then he says this, yet now we know him in this way no longer. What's he talking about? We don't know Jesus according to the flesh. We know Jesus in a different way. And Paul then is connecting that knowing Jesus in a different way to knowing our brothers and sisters in Christ in a different way. We know them as a new man. That's going to be tomorrow. So join us. Thank you for watching.